Good afternoon, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to day 4 of Victorian poetry as part of Victober. So Victober is a month-long read-along hosted by Kate Howe, Katie at Books and Things, and Lucy the Reader. And today we're on our 4th day of a different poet every day. So I'm a little bit late coming to filming this today because I got a little bit distracted today. And yesterday evening, in fact. So yesterday evening I ended up watching the whole of the BBC miniseries of North and South, which took me to quite late into the night. And today I sat down, intending to learn very important, detailed things about acute kidney injury and renal replacement therapy. And somehow I wound up reading North and South, which I've been doing for most of the day. But the author of North and South, Elizabeth Gaskell, was a very great friend of the family, to whom this next poet belongs. So we are going to be talking about Emily Bronte today. So Emily Bronte is the only one of the Bronte siblings who is included in this anthology. And she, I believe, is widely regarded to be the best poet. I have to say, let's see, how can I put this? The last few poets, like Tennyson and Browning, the poems by them I consider to be like really glorious poems and wonderful examples of Victorian literature. Obviously, Wuthering Heights is a stunning example of Victorian literature at its height. Emily Bronte's poems, maybe not so much, but I will read the poem and give you the chance to form your own opinion. So there are a couple of shorter poems by Emily Bronte. She tended to write shorter poems. The first, High Waving Heather, I read for the first Victober that I took part in, and it has become one of my most quoted pieces of poetry, just because the first 2 lines, high waving heather neath stormy blast, blending midnight and moonlight and bright shining stars, and I say that rhythmically, deliberately there, are so memorable and also so evocative of a moorland in storm, that living as I do in Yorkshire, anytime I go up onto a hill and see any high waving heather, I end up just immediately called back to those lines of that poem. The next one is a little bit longer, and so I have selected Shall Earth No More Inspire Thee? And this poem was written in 1841 and it was first published in 1850. So let's go. Shall earth no more inspire thee, thou lonely dreamer now? Since passion may not fire thee, shall nature cease to bow? Thy mind is ever moving in regions dark to thee. Recall its useless roving, come back and dwell with me. I know my mountain breezes enchant and soothe thee still. I know my sunshine pleases despite thy wayward will. When day with evening blending sinks from the summer sky, I've seen thy spirit bending in fond idolatry. I've watched thee every hour. I know my mighty sway. I know my magic power to drive thy griefs away. Few hearts to mortals given on earth so wildly pine, yet none would ask a heaven more like this earth than mine. Then let my wings caress thee, thy comrade let me be, since naught beside can bless thee. Return and dwell with me. So far in these poems we've had a political poem, we've had quite a philosophical poem, we've had quite a psychological poem, and now we have a nature poem. And it is interesting as a nature poem. It presents nature as a personified entity. Nature is the one who is speaking to a former devotee. It's like nature is the deity here, but a weird form of deity that has to kind of entreat somebody to come back to it. It's almost like somebody used to appreciate the value of nature and has now taken to, appreciating the value of towns and maybe clothing and finery and so on, and nature is saying, your first great love was out here in the fresh air and the sunshine, so forget worldly cares and return to the beauties of nature. It is attractive, it is endearing, I would say, but it's kind of a little bit trite as well. I don't know whether I'm unfair in saying that, but I emphasised the rhythm when I was speaking the first few lines of High Waving Heather. Sorry, too many V's and Th's in that line. High Waving Heather. Because I think that rhythm is a very core feature of Emily Bronte's poems. And that's not just in these two, it's also in the other ones that I've read at times. And there's something almost childlike in that quality. There's something very sing-song. So I practiced reading this a couple of times to see if I could read it without depending on the rhythm. But the rhythm almost forces itself to be known. So it's like da 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 da, and that goes on throughout the whole poem relentlessly. There is not one line that breaks it. So if we contrast that to the Tennyson poem that we had a couple of days ago, there was one line in that poem that didn't fit with the established rhythmical structures of the verses, and that felt very deliberate. It was the line when I embark, and in the context of that poem, when I embark meant when I die. So it was worthwhile for that rhythm to be interrupted to add weight to the idea of the speaker contemplating that moment of his death. But this is really fixed. This doesn't give way to anything. There is no break in the whole of this rhythm all the way through, and there's also almost no break in the rhyme. The first time I read this, I had to stop the recording and start again, because I read Sinks from the Summer Sky, I've seen thy spirit bending in fond idolatry. And then I had this little debate of like, did it used to be pronounced try? Because it seems really out of character with this poem that she used a rhyme that's not a complete rhyme. And I don't know whether it was deliberate to lend importance to this idea of idolising nature and seeing nature as the deity, or whether it was just a difference in pronunciation at that time. Like, I really can't make up my mind, but you know, if you've got any thoughts, tell me what you think about that, like whether that was a deliberate poetic choice or whether she just couldn't quite find the perfect rhyme, because it's like she seems almost obsessed with getting this poem right. And I've spoken previously about how much I admire Victorian poets for, you know, doing poetry right and getting the rhymes right and getting the rhythm right. But I guess this poem is a demonstration of the fact that it is possible to overdo it, and in creating an attractive poem that fits all of the principles of good poetry, she's somehow missing some of the art and passion that is present in her written work. I'm not saying that this is a passionless poem, that this is an emotionless poem. I am interested by the idea of nearly fell sideways off my chair. Of the character that nature is talking to, having this mind ever moving, this useless roving, and it's an interesting depiction of mental health for the time period, I suppose, of this idea of kind of like a purposeless restlessness, and just an inability to settle and to to get involved in a task, this kind of like, finding it difficult to find the words to describe it, but it seems suggestive to me of a kind of depression, not a lethargic depression, but a depression nonetheless that is unable to be inspired. And it's almost like Emily Bronte is writing about herself from the perspective of nature, as though she is fighting against that lack of inspiration with herself and trying to direct herself back to the nature that has inspired her in the past, if that makes sense. By highlighting all of these features of nature that she has previously so admired, like the day with evening blending, so this idea of the beautiful moving scene of a sunset, and this idea that the nature that she has around her is as good as any heaven. So there's a little bit in the introductory paragraph that I'm just going to read. Catherine Earnshaw's dream in Book 1, Chapter 9 of Emily Bronte's only novel, Wuthering Heights, is relevant. "This is nothing," cried she. "I was only going to say that heaven did not seem to be my home, and I broke my heart with weeping to come back to earth, and the angels were so angry that they flung me out into the middle of the heath on the top of Wuthering Heights, where I woke sobbing for joy." This idea that she wouldn't be at home in any kind of vision of heaven as it is presented by the church, but that untainted nature is better than anything that could be created as heaven. So that's quite interesting, and the way that she seeks that as a solace to her mental state when she is needing. Apparently soothing is a word that she uses, and suffering from griefs, which at the time I believe she had recently lost a sister. I think it's fair to say, when you're talking about the Brontes, it's probably fair to say recently lost a sister, because they seem to be losing siblings from a very early age throughout their lives. It doesn't say in the little introduction here when Anne died, but I'm fairly sure Anne died and then Emily died and then Charlotte died. I might be wrong. So anyway, yeah, that's my slightly confused thoughts on Shall Earth No More Inspire Thee. I like it as a poem in terms of exhorting us to seek that inspiration from nature, and maybe turn our backs on some of the things that we turn to instead of nature in order to go out and enjoy the heath and the wilderness and the sunshine. But yeah, I just don't find it's got the emotional depth that it almost should have, which is why I kind of think that it was maybe written in a time when she was feeling less inspired herself. I don't know, what do you think? Maybe you liked this better than I did. I'll read it one more time because it's quite short, and then I will leave you there. Shall earth no more inspire thee, thou lonely dreamer now? Since passion may not fire thee, shall nature cease to bow? Thy mind is ever moving in regions dark to thee. Recall its useless roving, come back and dwell with me. I know my mountain breezes enchant and soothe thee still. I know my sunshine pleases despite thy wayward will. When day with evening blending sinks from the summer sky, I've seen thy spirit bending in fond idolatry. I've watched thee every hour, I know my mighty sway. I know my magic power to drive thy griefs away. Few hearts to mortals given on earth so wildly pine, yet none would ask a heaven more like this earth than thine. Then let my winds caress thee, thy comrade let me be, since naught beside can bless thee. Return and dwell with me. I should note that at the end there's no full stop. It's kind of left kind of in suspense, as though the speech could continue, or like you're left kind of like with this sense of hanging, I suppose. I guess there's something to be said there about the image of nature kind of watching over somebody and acting as kind of like a guardian to them. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I know I'm not good at analysing poetry at the best of times, but I would struggle to come up with any further analysis than what I've already given. Whereas I think the 3 poems I've spoken about previously, I gave a very superficial coverage to. This poem, you could look at it for a very long time, and I think it would still just be a poem about this idea of nature watching over somebody who's a bit depressed. I don't know. Maybe this is not going to be one of the best poems of the week, or one of the best videos of the week. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what your thoughts are, and if you want me to change my mind, tell me so in the comments. And take care, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Oh, shall I tell you which poet we're going to have next? Arthur Hugh Clough. Can I say Clough or Clough? Yeah. So we'll find out who he is tomorrow.